Cairo is exerting pressure on Hamas to accept ceasefire proposals, warning of possible collapse of the Gaza regime. But Hamas says the proposals in their current form mean surrender and they will be rejected. Is the Egyptian initiative the only way to end the war? And what are the options available should these proposals reach a deadlock? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Mariam Namazi. The UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon is in Cairo to talk about a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. It's the latest in diplomatic efforts to broker a truce and end the war in Gaza that's killed around 1,000 Palestinians. So far, only Egypt and France have come up with a concrete proposal for peace, but neither Israel nor Hamas have fully accepted its terms. Well, Egypt's initiative suggests a 2-week calming period. During this time, firing would stop from both sides and aid agencies could access the Strip unhindered. A longer-term truce would then be established that could last between 10 and 15 years. Now, as part of the longer-term deal, Hamas would agree to stop making weapons and smuggling them in over the Egyptian border. Hamas has said it will oppose any deal that does not include an immediate and complete withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza. The group also says the deal does not specify that Israel will lift its suffocating blockade of the Gaza Strip. Hamas is not the only Palestinian group that has rejected the proposals in their current form.
We reject such initiatives and reject all policies that attempt to change the current formulas. The Gaza Strip has been under occupation since 1967 till 2005. Then there was resistance to occupation. After 2005, the siege continued. Now they want to enforce a new formula that includes maintaining the occupation while suffocating the resistance. This formula is totally rejected by the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, and I assure you it's also rejected by all Palestinian factions.
Well, joining us now are our guests in Cairo, Hassan Issa. He's a former Egyptian ambassador to Israel. In Beirut, Alistair Crook, former European Union mediator in the Middle East. And in Amman, Jawad Al-Hamad, director of the Middle East Studies Centre. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Alistair Crook, Hamas has made it abundantly clear that any ceasefire proposal has to contain nothing less than a withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza and a complete opening of the border crossings. Is that acceptable to Israel?
Well, when we look at the end of the last truce, the truce that collapsed and preceded the present attacks on Gaza, Israel was certainly seeing this tacitly as being the likely outcome if there was a renewal of negotiations. So I think although Israel will be tough on this, in fact, I think they do understand that the basic equation for any solution must be an opening of the crossings in return for an end to the rocket fire.
Hamas has also said, Jawad Al-Hamad, if I can put this to you, Hamas has said that it will not agree to the deployment of armed international forces in Gaza, but they will accept soldiers deployed by a country like Turkey.
Indeed, what I have heard from Hamas saying in the media and even some personal contact with some figures who are affiliated to Hamas saying that we accept the international monitors on the borders with Egypt and with Israel together, and they want to add Turkish also to the European monitors at those borders. But they do not reject to have any international interference in the border crossings, and it's, of course, investigation for any weaponry or so through Gaza.
If Hassan Issa, you've been involved in these kinds of negotiations before. The ceasefire proposal in its current form is unacceptable to Hamas. They want a short-term truce with a specific timetable, and they also want a commitment from the Israeli side to lift the siege to open the border crossings.
Well, then there's 2 points here. First, the bilateral ceasefire. The Israelis want guarantees, Hamas wants guarantees, and they're both suffering. As for the crossings, both want guarantees also that it is not going to use against each other. We are intermediate between both of them to find a solution. I hope we can, and I hope Hamas looks at the situation in a practical way and relieves the Palestinian people in Gaza from the hell that they are suffering from right now.
So, Alistair Crook, how can this be resolved? Because one of the main obstacles, it's clear, to any ceasefire, we're going around in circles a little bit here, but it does kind of reflect the dilemma, the deadlock that we have. It seems to be which side should stand down first, whether it should be the Israelis who end the blockade of Gaza or whether Palestinian rocket attacks on Israel should stop first. How do we get round this? How can this be resolved?
Well, I think it's quite clear. I think the problem of this derived from the UN Security Council resolution, which was specific in fact in permitting Israel to leave its troops on the ground in Gaza after a ceasefire came into effect. The wording says it would lead to the withdrawal of Israeli troops. And that clearly is just not going to be acceptable to Hamas. But we do have additional problems. I mean, there are other problems about the role of the authority and other things that have been introduced. And I think some of these also have been complicating the process. But the essence of it should be really quite simple. A cessation of fire, which can be timed to be a mutual stopping of fire. And at that time, there must be withdrawal. And from the end of the withdrawal, an end to rocket fire. I think that part of the mechanics can be worked out quite easily. But it's the other bits that are more complicated in terms of the monitoring and the crossings.
I mean, what are the main obstacles? Who is holding up a possible ceasefire? Because Egyptian officials have accused Hamas of using the war on Gaza for political gain.
Well, I think also Egypt has its own political interests in this negotiation. So to a certain extent, it's a mediator. But actually, the Israeli objectives are fairly clear. That is an end to arms smuggling, which is not related to the Rafah crossing per se, because I don't think anyone thinks that there has been smuggling through the Rafah crossings. We're talking about tunnels and other means of smuggling. So that is one element of the Israeli demand. Well, let me pick up on that point and put it to Hassan Issa,
because this is an issue that's very important to Israel. It's one of its stated aims in this war is to prevent the smuggling of arms into Gaza through those tunnels. Now, one Israeli proposal calls for a barrier on the Egyptian side of the Rafah border to be guarded by Egyptian soldiers who would make sure that there is no weapon smuggling. Hassan Issa, would that work? Could the Egyptians provide those guarantees?
Now, we have to realize first that according to the peace agreement between Egypt and Israel, Egypt is obliged to keep only 750 policemen on the borders. 750 policemen, not army, not troops, policemen. Nevertheless, we managed to destroy a lot of tunnels after Sharon. When Sharon left, when he left the Gaza, we found almost 180 tunnels that we destroyed. Although the Israeli army was in there, and we managed to destroy them. We did not do this because of Israeli security as much as it was for the Egyptian security. But you couldn't have done a very good job because the weapons are still getting through. We destroy tunnels and they dig more tunnels. And again, I say, we are not doing this for Israeli security as much as it is for Egyptian security. Does
Egypt have the capability to prevent arms smuggling, supplies, rearmaments going through the tunnels, the area known as the Philadelphia Corridor, into Gaza?
Through the Philadelphia Corridor is out of the question because we're talking about 14 kilometers that are guarded by 750 policemen. If you think that they are smuggling it through the Rafah crossing, this also cannot be. We're talking about tunnels that are being dug every day, and it's a commercial enterprise. We know who is digging tunnels, and we know for whose sake, and Hamas, and we know that they are doing it as a commercial enterprise. A tunnel that costs $500,000 or $1 million
so it doesn't sound
like
a
return of another
Egypt
million.
is going to be able to oblige on that proposal. Jawad al-Hamad, Hamas's entire ideology is based on resistance. They only have to survive in order to claim victory, so-called victory in this conflict with Israel. So my question is, are they likely to back down until they get what they want from a ceasefire proposal?
What Hamas asked for is very simple, as Mr. Alistair Cook had talked about it. It is just an immediate ceasefire, an immediate withdrawal for Israeli troops from Gaza, and also a timetable or scheduled lifting of the blockades against Gaza, opening the crossings, even with some measures that might be taken in regard of stopping any smuggling of drugs or criminals or even weapons through these crossings. And they accepted also the international monitors. What is required from Hamas more than this? I don't know indeed what are the basics of the Israeli argument about such a thing. They want Egypt to work as a guard, Israeli guard on in the Gaza Egypt borders. This cannot be indeed, and I think Egyptians will not accept this, as Mr. Isa has mentioned before a minute. So I think Hamas has yielded much in this proposal, and I think today there was deep negotiations between Egyptian and Hamas, and now there is an Israeli delegation and Turkish delegation. They are working on a new draft of the Egyptian initiative. Now they are restructuring even the Egyptian initiative to give Hamas some of its requirements. At the same time, they will satisfy some of the Israeli requirements also in regard of giving a truce for 6 months or 1 year or so, because this is what can be achieved at this moment, as I think.
All right,
and
well,
this will be indeed.
We'll take a short break there, but when we come back, what can an Arab summit achieve? Stay with us.